Who's ready to get a little bit better? You should comment yes. Woo! Okay, here we go. Let's talk about something. God, I've been having a conversation with a bunch of my clients, a bunch of friends, people I lead, and what I'm getting ready to talk to you about could be game-changing. I wish I could give credit. I think I heard this first from T.D. Jakes a decade or more ago on a little podcast. It was a little short, little snippet, and just grabbed hold of it, rocked my world then, and now I've just kind of been teaching it more, kind of the concepts expanded a good bit, and it comes because everybody here knows the pain of frustration. Frustration, disappointment, when people don't do what you want them to do, what you think they should do, when people you care about do stupid things. It's just frustrating, right? Like, I don't know about you, but I don't like watching the people I care about go through hard things. I get frustrated when my people in my life don't do the things I need them or want them to do, or they just don't do it the way I want them to. And so these things create frustration and disappointment. Would you like to know how to end 99% of the frustration in your life? Anybody like to know that? I'm going to give you, and I really do. I was thinking about it before I got on this, and I was like, can this really end 99? It really can end 99% of your frustration. And here it is. It is knowing the difference between these two things: responsibility versus concern. Responsibility versus concern. There are things in your life, in my life, that we are 100% responsible for. And let me tell you the biggest thing you are responsible for. You are responsible for the decisions you make, just like I am. Nobody can make a decision for you. And so you are responsible for what you choose to believe, what you choose to do or do not do. You're responsible for that because that's your choice. You are responsible for how you respond to what happens to you, for how you respond to what people say to you. Nobody can make you do anything. You are responsible for the meaning that you bring to anything that happens in your life. As Tony Robbins says, life is not what is happening to you. Life is the meaning that you give to what's happening to you. So don't tell me what's happening to you. Don't play the victim. Do not act powerless. Tell me what you are going to choose to do as a result of it. So you're responsible for those decisions. You're responsible for the emotions that you feel on a daily basis. I know bad things can happen, but even in the midst of bad things, you get to choose how you're going to respond. You get to choose what you're going to feel as a result. So you, my friend, have responsibilities just like I have responsibilities. Certain things you and I, we are responsible for, and nobody else can be. And then there are other things in your life that you are concerned about. It's a concern, but it ain't your responsibility. And concern is a big deal, right? Because you have concerns about the people that you love. You're concerned about what they do or do not do. You're concerned about how their life turns out. You're concerned about, like parents with adult children. You are concerned about your kid making it, about their marriage, about their career. You're concerned. But once those children grew up and became adults, they're not your responsibility anymore. I'm trying to help some people out here. You're concerned, but it's not your responsibility. You're concerned about what clients do or don't do, about what your employees do or do not do. Now, I understand to a degree, like I'm responsible for my team and what they do. The buck stops with me. But when we're talking personal responsibility, I can't take responsibility for what a team member does or does not do. Now, I'm responsible to fire them if they don't do their job, right? That's my responsibility. But what they do or do not do, at the end of the day, that's their responsibility. Again, I'm concerned about life, like things that are happening, like whether it's the hurricane that just happened. I actually did a Facebook Live about this a little bit ago. I just wanted to take time to soak into this a little bit more because this is so powerful. I'm going to give you another layer I didn't do in that live. And so you're concerned about how you respond. Like the hurricane just happened. Well, you're concerned about the hurricane, but you can't take responsibility for whether it came or didn't come, right? And so responsibility versus concern, knowing the difference. See, if you tried to take a concern and turn it into your responsibility, you know what happens? When you take something that you're concerned about and you turn it into a responsibility, you try to own it, take it as your responsibility, you are going to create opportunity for frustration that leads to disappointment. That if you hold on to it long enough, making that thing that is actually a concern your responsibility, it will inevitably lead to pain and suffering in your life. Because it's a concern you have, but it is not your responsibility. You cannot, at the end of the day, control the outcome. And I'm telling you, people, there is so many things in your life, in my life, that we would remove frustration, disappointment, pain, and suffering if we would just learn that we cannot take a concern and turn it into responsibility. How's that happen? Number one, that happens if you take something that's a concern and you make a decision. You say, well, I'm going to take that. I'm going to make it my responsibility. And you take ownership of it when you shouldn't. But there's another way that happens also, is because when other people, they have something that is their responsibility and they refuse to take responsibility. And so they take that responsibility that is theirs and they throw it onto your shoulders. And if you don't throw it back to them and you're like, okay, I guess that's mine now, then you're going to be screwed, because frustration and disappointment is on its way to you. And you don't have to use your imagination, do you? Just like I don't, because we've all been in that situation. Now, there's other times when there's something that is your responsibility and you refuse to take responsibility. In my experience and 25 years of being a pastor and all the coaching that I've done, just the life that I live, there are two reasons that you do not take responsibility for something. Number one, you are living in denial, my friend. And you're just in denial. Well, that's not my responsibility, so I don't have to do that. It's not mine. I don't have to do that. And so you're living in denial, you're avoiding, you're resisting taking responsibility, and so you don't do it. But another one that I see happen so many times, and it is extremely prevalent in the world in which we live today, and it is people that do not take responsibility because they have been crippled and handicapped from taking responsibility in their life because of well-intentioned people who have taught them that they don't have to because they're going to take it for them. They've been crippled by people enabling them to not take responsibility. They've been crippled because they have been free from responsibility because they had a parent that took everything as their responsibility. They had a spouse that took care and solved all the problems, and so they don't even know how to take responsibility. So, concern versus responsibility. You want to eradicate 99% of your frustration? Learn the difference between concern and responsibility. Now, what do you do with something? This is where it's getting ready to change your life right here. You ready? You should take notes here. What do you do with a concern? That you care deeply about this thing, this situation, this person. The outcome affects you in a real way. It affects the person you love in a real way. So what do you do with something that is a concern and you care deeply about it? Well, there's two things you can do, and I'm going to give you a little illustration here first. This will help you. So this is something that you can control. This little itty bitty circle, I would write it smaller if I could, because that's about how much you and I can control in this world. But this is the circle of control. I think I actually missed a letter because the circle was so small. Control. And what do you do with control? That circle? You can take what we just talked about, responsibility. Okay? Abbreviating. Now, this next circle is the circle of influence. So there are two things that you can do with something that is a concern, but not your responsibility. Number one, you can exercise influence. I just said that word wrong. I don't know if you caught it, but I said influence, and that's not the word. Influence. You can exercise influence with intentionality. Exercise influence with intentionality. That's the first thing you can do. The second thing you can do, and then this is the circle of concern out here, and a more accurate depiction would remove this outside line, because everything outside of this little circle of control and this little circle of influence, everything outside of that, this is a never-ending circle, is an area of concern for you. Let that sink in for a second. You got this small little circle of control that you can take responsibility. You got this circle of it, like you don't have influence over everything in your life. There's a lot of things you care about, you're concerned about, but you do not actually have the opportunity to exercise influence. And so there's a circle where you can exercise influence, but then this one that is never ending in reality is the circle of concern. And so with this one, you got to take responsibility. With this one, you exercise intentionality. With this one, some of you might not like this word. It's a big one. You've got to learn to trust. You've got to learn to let it go. Release it. Because when it comes to something you're concerned about, two things you can do: exercise influence and learn to release or trust, right? Now, here's a big, big thing, because some of you want to exercise influence, and you're like, well, I'm not taking responsibility over that. I'm just exercising influence. I love you. Some of you, when you try to exercise influence and you cross over and you're using tactics of guilt, shame, control, manipulation, that is not the kind of exercise of influence I'm talking about. I want to encourage you, if you're going to exercise influence, it is going to be in a means of support, encouragement, adding wisdom or insight, sharing from your experience. But even as you exercise influence, you have to release expectations, because it is not your responsibility what they do with your support, with your influence. You're responsible to exercise influence. Like, take this as leading a team, right? You're responsible for the team ultimately, but if you want to get your team to do what they need to do, what you want them to do, then you've got to exercise influence. If you do it in a way that breaks down trust, it is not going to be long-term results. So you need to exercise influence with healthy team dynamics, building trust, making people feel heard, seen, and valued. You can't control and manipulate and condemn and guilt and shame. Like, seriously, people, that is not exercising influence. That is toxic, and you want to run away from it. And some of you right now, feeling a little preacher on me right now, some of you need to face reality that you have not been exercising influence. What you've been trying to do is control the situation, and it's not yours to control, because it ain't your responsibility. So then you need, by the way, you exercise influence. At the end of the day, everybody, you still have to do this with a concern. You still have to let it go. You've got to trust. So learn the difference between responsibility and concern. If you want to write a couple things down, a few questions you can ask yourself to check yourself on this. Not to check someone else, but to check yourself. Question number 1, is this a responsibility or a concern? Starting point, right? Is this a responsibility or a concern? Question number 2, what is my responsibility? Because maybe you say, well, it's a concern. Or maybe you say it's a responsibility. Then you need to define, okay, what of this actually is my responsibility? And what of it is my concern? But what is my responsibility, right? And then for the concern side of it, the question you're going to ask is, what do I need to let go of? What concern do I need to release? What expectation do I need to release? What do I need to let go of? Some of you like the word surrender, trust. So when you let go of something, you can let go of it to that person because it's their responsibility. You can let go of it to whoever is actually responsible So if it's somebody else's kid, you ain't responsible, but let it go to his parents. They're responsible, right? There's other situations where there's a person in authority that's accountable and responsible, and so you can release it to them. If you're a person of faith, let it go to God, let it go to the universe, let it go to your faith in a higher power. But for me, my greatest advantage in letting things go is that I've got a God that loves me and cares more about me and that person or that situation than I could ever. And so I'm able to release it in prayer and trust and say, all right, God, this is above my pay grade. I'm going to release it and let it go. So responsibility, concern. What is my responsibility? What do I need to let go of? So if you operate in this, you might remove 99% of the frustration from your life. That's my hope, that you'll take this and practically apply it. It applies in every area of your life, your business, your marriage, your parenting, your relationships, your physical health, everything. It applies in everything. So look for ways that you can apply that. Ask those 3 questions. I hope this served you well. You should just get off this video right now and go out there and give your greatness to the world because somebody needs what's on the inside of you. Don't hold it back. See, you're responsible to not hold back your greatness and to go out there and give it to the world. I love you guys. Have a great week.